Good afternoon, everybody. Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest, David Rabior. Thank you for joining the Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest podcast. I know it's been a long time. I've missed you. I'm sure you missed me. A lot has gone on. I want to jump right in it today and have a conversation with you guys about, the past year. I think the last podcast I did was, 6 months ago. And I jumped into this podcast stuff and I didn't really commit to doing it long term. I wasn't sure how I was going to go and if I would like to do it or if I even had the time. And that's been the biggest issue with me, is having the time to do the podcast. But it's a new year, 2025. We did 18 or 19 podcasts. No, we did 18 podcasts in 2024. I was averaging about 1,500 downloads a month on those, and I'm still getting a lot of streams and a lot of downloads right now to this day. And I want to thank all of you guys for that. I want to thank everybody for, following and liking and subscribing to like my YouTube channel where I posted the videos. This year, I'm not going to probably post videos on YouTube. I'm just going to post the podcast across all formats on Spotify and Apple and YouTube and all that stuff and Amazon. It's on pretty much everything. I just can't commit to editing the videos and doing all that stuff anymore. I've been trying to find a podcast studio that I could go into, pay money, and, have them record me and then send me everything so I could just post it. I have looked high and low for someone to do that, and I haven't been able to find anybody who has a good enough setup for me to go in there and pay money to do it, which I have no problem doing. But if you like this podcast, please follow me, like it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, whatever, on Spotify, Apple, anyone that you listen to, whatever format. It really does help a lot, and I really do appreciate anybody who takes the time to, leave me a review or like my stuff or follow me or anything like that. It really does go a long way, and I really appreciate all of you guys that are diehards that are rocking with me every day as clients and that have gotten in touch with me off places like Bigger Pockets, where I was the first Detroit agent to become a referral agent for Bigger Pockets. And I've gotten a tremendous amount of people who have come to me from that. I wanted to talk about this year, like the new vision for 2025, the market condition, like where are we at? What's going on? What do we need to know? Everybody's always calling me and they're like from other markets. So everything that you see and you read is a lot of delay to it. In a lot of cases, you see things and you read it and you're like, oh man, I wonder if that's really going on. Well, a lot of times by the time that you read that, or you're exposed to that, it's months away from the actual event or months away from the progression in the market or whatever you want to call it. And a lot of people miss the boat because they're kind of watching from afar and they don't know how to stay in front of the right trend. And the right trend is getting with someone like me who's in the middle of the market, who's constantly buying and selling real estate in Detroit and in the suburbs of Detroit and meeting new people and always, looking at people's goals and looking at their financial future, looking at their current situation, trying to give and offer advice that I believe will be helpful. And I want to do that for you. And I wanted to get into this episode to talk a little bit about what took place last year so you guys can get caught up, and then I'll kind of transition into the current time and like what I think for the future. And this time when I go through this year, I'm going to talk about a lot of different things like the stock market. I'm going to talk about crypto. I'm going to talk about real estate as a flipper, as a buy and hold person, as a regular consumer, because I feel like you can't really get the whole picture about what's going on in the market if you don't look at all of it. The thing about being an investor is we're always looking at the asset and we're trying to calculate the numbers and we're trying to figure out the rent and, calculate property management cost if we use that, which a lot of you guys, I don't believe you need it, which is a whole different story. But we're looking at these numbers. We're looking at rent, taxes, insurance. We're looking at maintenance costs. We're looking at CapEx. We're looking at finance costs. We're trying to calculate, hey, how much passive income will I make truly if I deduct realistic numbers and not just numbers that people are giving you to try to sell you something, but real numbers that you get when you're an investor and you kind of know how to calculate the actual return based on real numbers and not fiction. So everybody's coming to me and they're always wanting to know, and it's really hard for you to get a picture of the market and why things are the way they are if you don't understand the concept of what is really going on in the market, which I know I've talked about in other episodes, but it really comes down to the median income of a Detroiter is like $38,000. $38,000 only determines that they can rent up to a certain amount of money, and it only determines that they can buy up to a certain amount of money. And that number for a home buyer is like $140,000 or less. That's where the majority of the traffic will be. And on the other side of it, they can only rent for like $1,300. Now we're in a position where housing prices in the suburbs are not attainable, and people have to start looking at Detroit, which is causing a lot of people to come into this market and drive the price through the roof like it's never been. And in some neighborhoods, they're getting back to where they were in the late 90s and early 2000s. I remember in Cornerstone, for example, a bungalow in 2000, let's say 2001, my dad sold his house for $105,000 on University Street in 48224. Now the houses are at 120, 125. There's some for 130, 140, whatever. It took a long time. Think about that. 2001, they rolled all the way through the market collapsing in 2009. And now in 2025, we're actually seeing an increase over what it was then. I mean, I bought houses in that area in 2010, 11, 12 for like $5,000, $10,000. And now they're all worth over $100,000 and some significantly more than that. But before we get into that whole spiel, I know I'm getting off on a tangent. Let's talk about where we're at and, kind of what happened. In 2024, I had the absolute best real estate year as an agent and investor of my entire career. And I don't foresee it getting any worse. I feel like it's going to continue to get better. The market penetration that I have as an agent, a respected guy who does hundreds of deals. Last year I did well over 230 deals, residential, single family, multifamily, all that stuff. And I'm turning doors like crazy. And the company that I'm partnered in, Clyde Realty, we're actually in the top 5 of all brokerages in Detroit in general. Not just for investors, but in general. We have that much market penetration. We have over 100 listings at any given time on the MLS. And I can tell you, just based on what goes on in my own office, kind of the state of the union when it comes to this market. But now people are actually starting to acknowledge that these 3 kids who are now, in their 40s, myself, Ben, Ness, Alex Lauer, we've built something really nice. And a lot of people are coming to us and they want to work for us now. And that was great for 2024 to watch what we started in 2021 grow into something that's become larger than we really believed it would. And we weren't trying to make it be that way. It just organically kind of turned that way. And it was great, to see that come. And we actually got a call from RealComp where they told us, hey, you guys know that you're one of the best in the city, like by far. And we didn't know that because we didn't care. We weren't really paying attention to that. We don't do this like, Keller Williams or Remax or one of those types where, they don't have a lot of really great agents. They have some great agents with a bunch of brand new people, and like they rah-rah by constantly having like monthly meetings where they talk about how much units they've sold and what their volume was and what their market share is and all of that stuff. But in the end of the day, like you got, 100 agents or 150 agents in your brokerage and like 10 of them are driving the entire thing. And the rest of them are just sitting around, smoking ciggies, drinking beer, doing yoga, whatever they're doing, but they're not contributing. But that's how they get you to agree to go there and get involved in that pyramid schemey real estate model where you come in from the ground floor and like you have to pay a mentor and you have to lose like 50% or 30% of your income as a real estate person to work underneath somebody who pretends to add value to you. And basically they're just, sucking you dry. And if you become successful, it's really a dog eat dog situation. You either become a killer or you don't. And they really don't care if you don't. Like they'll tell you they do, but they don't. If you wash out, you wash out. They move on. They recruit another person. They rinse and repeat and do it all over again. And a lot of that's been going on. And I think that's what's contributed to all of these people coming to us at Clyde Realty and Detroit Buy Hold Invest and wanting to get down and be with us and get a low cap and get support and be around people who do hundreds of deals and learn how to be successful as an agent by not focusing on that retail model, which I believe for most real estate people is unattainable at this point. You have these huge groups that have hundreds of agents or 100 agents. Like if you're a group and there's only so much market share, like we have like a month and a half worth of inventory in the market. In a normal market, we'd have 6 months. And you have these groups, they have 70 or 100 agents, and they're buying up all these zip codes on Zillow and whatnot, and they're still not successful. Like the same 10 or 15 agents drive the entire thing, and the rest of them, 90 other ones are sitting around hoping one day they'll get their chance, and they just wash out left and right. It's been killing everybody. And that's a big thing in 2024. I know a lot of new agents that just said, this isn't for me. I'm not making enough money and I can't continue to operate this way. I need to be able to pay my bills, live my life, and enjoy myself. And this is not working out. That was one thing I learned in 2024. But in 2024, even though we had great success with, Clyde Realty and Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest, and we picked up a lot of really solid, people to contribute under our flag that we fly, a lot of great things happened in my life. I had my first grandson came last year. He's now over a year old, and he's doing really good. He came prematurely. My daughter went into labor when she was only pregnant for 6 months. And we were extremely stressed out about that, and we were really concerned for her health and also for the health of the baby. But our grandson Matthias actually was born prematurely, and now he's well over a year old, and he's walking, and he's almost started to talk, and he's running around like crazy, and everything that we worried about didn't actually happen, and he was great, and God willing, he'll continue to grow and be strong and be everything that we know he can with all the support that we'll give him throughout his life. Fortunately for us, there was no downside. And even though he was born prematurely and he's well over a year old, when you stand him next to a baby of his age that was carried to term, he's bigger and he's smarter and he's faster. So I don't know how that happens, but it did. And we were fortunate, and God was good to us there. And, my wife really has been supportive of my daughter and her husband and trying to be there for the baby all the time. And I'm working extra hard to provide a life so that my wife can provide that for my daughter and my grandson and my son-in-law. And, I try to spend as much time with them as I can, even though I'm constantly working as hard as I can to provide, a life and a lifestyle that affords that for my family. And that's the trade when you become successful. Someone's got to do it, right? And then the more the time that you focus on that, the less time that you get to spend with your family, and someone's got to fill that void. And fortunately for me, I'm lucky enough to be with, my wife for 21 years now. We've been together, and she's like no other woman I've ever met. And without her, I couldn't do all of the things I do. I'd never be as successful as I am right now. And she's been there for me every time that I took a big chance, and I've taken some Hail Mary pass type chances in my career. And fortunately for me, I've landed in the right spot, and it could have all gone wrong. It didn't. So again, God must be looking out for me, or I just must be extremely lucky. I don't know, but I want to believe that, the man upstairs is the one that's pulling those strings. So after my grandson was born, it transitioned into summertime. We had an extremely hot market in the spring last year. Values last year in all neighborhoods of Detroit, pretty much everyone, they appreciated over 10% year over year. In some cases, we saw appreciation well over that in areas, and it all corresponds to that median income, the amount of money that everything cost, inflation, and, mortgage rates going high. And against all odds with all of those things, we have, high interest rates, extremely high home prices, a limited amount of inventory, a limited amount of buyers, tighter criteria from lenders. It's harder. It's very much harder for a regular consumer to get a loan and be able to afford it. And it's impossible for them to buy in the suburbs as a first-time home buyer like they used to. What they used to want, that $120,000 to $150,000 house in Fraser or Roseville or some parts of East Point, et cetera, it's not there anymore. It's a fixer-upper, or it's a frame house on a crawl space with no garage for $125,000 in South Warren. And people are just not willing to do it anymore. So people who are smart, they bought houses when the prices were lower, and they took advantage of the COVID refinance rates that were under 3%, and some people under 2.5%. I mean, I refinanced my personal residence for 2.675% in 2020. It's almost like free money, right? So you got all these people on one side who bought right and refinanced and were able to, build equity and be able to get money that was essentially free. Then the market goes through the roof after COVID, right? And then you have what's left. What's left is consumers that have to buy for whatever reason. Maybe they're relocating. Maybe they are, just being told that they're getting sung that song that I keep seeing, like buy the house, date the rate, kind of stuff. And they don't know any better. And people only know what they know when they finally realize it, So you got all these agents who are buyer's agents or desperate agents that are like trying to convert people into buyers that never been, and they don't know any better. And that's the market. It's people that have no choice but to move, people that are relocating, or people who are finally approved and they're taking advantage of, down payment assistance or the FHA program or maybe VA or something like that. But the like conventional 20% down buyer in the market of the Detroit market, let's say, or Southern Macomb County or Ecorse or Lincoln Park, like it is like not there anymore. It's all 5% down conventionals, or it's MISHDA conventional buyers, or it's down payment assistance type first-time home buyers, and they can't get anything that they want for $140,000. They got to buy in Detroit. They have to, or they don't buy at all. And the smart people, they're like, hey, I'm not walking away from an interest rate on my home mortgage less than 3% when I have equity in my house of $50,000 or more to trade it for an 8% or a 7% mortgage rate for a 30-year, and then move into a property that's like kind of a downward step into a neighborhood that's not as nice as where I live right now and overpay for it. And then people who want to move, like it's a big thing in the Metro Detroit market for people that live in the suburbs for a long time to go and jump out of that and go into like more rural markets, where they get 5, 10, 20, 30 acres and a house and a pole barn and the whole thing. And that's what, most people kind of would do, but now those properties are so expensive that they're just holding tight. Like there's no point for me to do that. There's no point for me to move far away, pay way too much, pay the higher rate of taxes, and make all my living expenses go up when they made smart decisions. So the market's become very challenging. And on the other side of that, you've got people who are fully in a place to buy houses to rent to people who don't want to buy, who want to be renters. And there's a huge market for that. And Detroit has been exponentially better than anywhere else than you can think because of that. The only problem that we're having now is the median income is not increasing, and inflation got so high that people can't really afford. There can't be another jump in rent. Post-COVID, rents in Detroit for a 3-bedroom were like $950, $1,000, $1,100. Now they're like $1,300, $1,400. A 4-bedroom houses are renting $1,500, $1,600 on Section 8. Without the Section 8 program, those rents could never be achieved by a Detroiter because they just don't make enough money to afford it. And now the prices of the homes, the prices of the property taxes, the insurance, all those things are going up, and it's taking away the majority of the meat off the bone that made Detroit so satisfying for a lot of people. So in order for you to win, you have to really target what a Burr type of investor would. You have to buy turnkey. So you have a couple different options. Let me not put a number on, but let me just ramble on about what there is. You have turnkey rental certified or Section 8 certified rentals that the opportunity of buying one with like a $1,300 rent at a value is going to be someone looking to dump because they're distressed, or it's going to be someone who flips houses to sell them to landlords that are looking to buy them as a turnkey investment. That's one thing. The risk to that is if somebody bought a house for a good value and they put a tenant in there at a good amount of rent and they're Section 8, why in the hell are they trying to sell it to you? Why would they do that? Would you? No, you probably wouldn't, because it's stupid. You would hold on to it. So whenever you see a property like that, it doesn't mean you could never get a deal that way, but it does mean you need to be extremely cautious that someone's selling you their problem so they can run. And that's what my job is, to make sure that you don't get gypped by some, predatory investor or real estate person or wholesaler or something like that, because they will do that in not just in Detroit, but in all markets. If they think they can stick you for a win and make some money and run off on you and leave you with the burning fire to put out on your own, they'll do it. They don't care. They don't. A lot of them don't. They'll do it. And I'm not talking about, realtors or real estate people, like agents in general. I'm saying people in general, when they're in a situation of distress as a seller, will lie and cheat and steal or do whatever they have to do so that they can get out of it. And if that includes not telling people the truth, and then you getting involved in a deal with me as your agent and then some other agent representing them, and they're not telling them the truth, we have to go out and make sure that we prove that they're telling the truth. And we do that by, looking at the lease, looking at the HAB contract, looking at the rent ledger, going out and doing like a video walkthrough in person before we inspect. And while we're there, chatting up the tenant to see if there's anything that we're not picking up on. Looking for issues like sewer backups or, certain things that may not happen all the time, but happen enough to where somebody wants to bail, or trying to identify if it's an opportunity because the person got hooked up with the wrong person or the wrong property manager and they've been squeezing the life out of them. And now they're looking to dump, when that's really a good opportunity. It just needs a new management process, or it needs a new look by someone who actually knows how to do this. Because there's a lot of people floating around in this market who claim to be experts on management, experts on acquisition, experts on rentals, and experts on apartments, and they don't know jack. Basically, jack shit. Okay. And they go around and they say all that stuff and they market themselves on social media, and they, you can make yourself look like a freaking superstar on TikTok and on Instagram and on YouTube and all that stuff. That's the thing. The internet's made people who aren't that special build themselves into something special. And then once you get enough people that follow you, then you get people who are diehards that don't question anything that's going on. They just believe everything that you say. Or they see all the hype and they don't think to themselves, like, is this really hype built around someone who's really legit and that does what they said? Or is it hype built around the idea that they are what they say? And people haven't really called them out yet, because how many people have you seen crash and burn in social media for being an expert? And then eventually people come out and say, I gave this person money, or I met this person and gave them the ability to help me, and they were an absolute fraud. It happens all the time. Then they crash and burn. They have to rename themselves and rebrand themselves and come back out and try again. And, there's so many people in this world, you can get away with it over and over again. I mean, I've seen property management companies get a whole bunch of people, manage them, screw it all up, close their management company, screw everybody, come back a year later, rename themselves, start over again, start managing people, screw them again, close themselves, sell it to some other management company, open back up again, and do it all over again. It happens. And you have to know that. And someone that's local in the market, that's been around, that's inside of the locker room, as they say, like, I got the inside scoop. I see what's going on. They know me. They know they're not going to pull the wool over my eyes. I'm not going to get fooled. And we're going to have a process of looking at the financials, going out, taking video, walking through them, getting a home inspection from a third party person. So you get, impartial type, conversation and reports, and not everyone's going to agree with each other, and that's how you get to the conclusion that you're looking for, by looking at all the information that you have and making an educated decision based on that. Okay, so that was a tangent, but let's get back to what I was saying before. 2024 taught us that markets are filled with wolves, and they're filled with sheep, and they're filled with a tremendous amount of opportunity. And we're seeing a 10% rate of inflation increase of appreciation, even though we have inflation. I'm sorry, I'm wording that wrong. With high interest rates, with a harder process to get the mortgage, with the introduction of the DSCR products, all of these different things that are going on, and hard money and construction fix and flip type loans, like all these things are flooding into the market to try to make things work out. We still have a tight inventory, and we still have a tremendous amount of renter activity and a tremendous amount of buyer activity, which is raising the cost of the houses. It's chewing a little bit of the meat off the bone for the investor, but it's giving you that appreciation that you can't get in other markets. And people forget to include that. If you buy a house for $100,000 today, and in 5 years it's worth $150,000, and you still make passive income off it throughout that 5 years that you hold it, sit down and make a list of the places that you believe that you can accomplish that. I'll wait because there's only a few, and I won't have to wait that long. If you're smart and know what you're talking about, it'll take you about 5 minutes to jot down the amount of places that you can actually achieve this, and Detroit is one of them. But Detroit is one of the only ones that had a population increase for the first time since 1958. This 2024 year, now that we're in 2025, I expect to see that even more so. And all of that is causing big business to take a look. You're going to start seeing, big businesses, Sam's Club and Costco and Target and Meijer and Walmart and all of these things. They're going to say, okay, Detroit is increasing population. People are starting to buy there. More homeowners are going to be there. You're going to see more auto parts stores and more grocery stores and more, Sam's Clubs and all of those type of things. That's how you know a city is coming back. And Detroit is starting to get that. We have Meijer stores, multiple now. We have multiple grocery stores popping up now. We have multiple new businesses popping up now. We have neighborhoods that are filled where before you would drive through them and they were blighted and boarded and they had abandoned houses, and now those are all gone. And the houses that are there are being redeveloped and renovated into rentals and homeowner type flips, and people are moving in. And now you're seeing men and women and different races and genres and straight people and gay people and all of the people, like everybody is commingling and just getting down in those neighborhoods and living and coexisting exactly how Detroit was before everybody left after the riots in, the late 60s. We had a rough ride from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Things got rough, and they got to the Kwame Kilpatrick era where, he ends up going to prison for over 25 years. He got sentenced to have his sentence commuted. We have faced a tremendous amount of adversity in Detroit to bankruptcy, and now here we are building it back, and it's getting built back better than it ever was. And this is the gold rush time. This is the gold rush. We are California. This is where millionaires are made. This is the equivalent of the gold rush back in the day, right? You got to find the opportunity. You got to go there, and you have to put your flag down before it gets oversaturated, because if you don't, it's just like Bitcoin. You go, and when Bitcoin first came out, you could buy it for, when I first started getting onto it, was around $9,000, and then it went to $42,000, and then it went down, and then it went up $64,000, and then it went down to $18,000 again, and then it went to $100,000, then it went to $105,000, then all-time high was like $109,000. Imagine if you were the guy who bought Bitcoin at $600 or $1,000 or $2,000, and that one Bitcoin becomes $109,000. That crypto thing is essentially, houses on steroids. Only thing is crypto, you don't have possession of it. You buy it for $1,000 right now, and if it goes down to 500, you lost 500. It can happen real quick. With a house, you really don't have that volatility. You buy a house, it sticks at value. If it goes up and down, depending on market conditions or certain things that happen, but houses hold their value. And even if they go down, if you're buying them to be a rental, if your house is worth $100,000 and you rent it for $1,300, and then the market goes down to $60,000, you're still going to be able to rent it for $1,300. Your tenant's going to stick it out most of the time, or you can still place a tenant at that same amount of rent, and you can hold on to it. And within 5 years, it's going to come back and be worth more than it was before the crash. That's the trend that I've seen in my lifetime, whereas with other markets like stocks, for example, like I do a lot of trading on Robinhood, and I do a lot of crypto trading on various different things, but let's say Coinbase, that's like my primary one I like to look at. I use Advanced. The markets have sucked. This January has been extremely volatile in the stock market. Every weekend for the last 3 weekends, it's gone up tremendously and then through the floor on the weekend, which is great when you trade crypto or you trade stocks. You load up when it's low and you sell when it's high. And every weekend you can load up, and during Wednesday or Thursday or something, when it hits the high, you can sell and make a profit every single week. That only lasts so long. But we have this bear and bull market. It's like a tug of war between what's going on. We have unsurety now because Trump is now the president, and he's talking about things that if they were to happen, my life would be so much better, like eliminating the IRS. Can I get an amen for that? Like, creating tariffs so that we don't have to pay taxes like we do now. Amen. I don't really like Trump. I never liked Biden. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. But Trump has said some things that make me say, maybe he's smarter than I want to give him credit for. I don't dislike him. And I do have more of a Republican type of belief system than I do Democrat, but I'm like kind of in the middle. I believe that, politics is, to me, I got better things to worry about than to hold a staunch stance on things. Like, I can't ever be someone that says I'm against women having the right to choose what they do with themselves or with their babies or whatever. Who am I to say that? I can't align myself with saying that a woman who, was assaulted sexually or molested or something like that can't abort. Like, who am I to say that? So I can never really be a Republican or a Democrat because I just don't align with them enough to be able to side with one or the other. And honestly, when they talk, they lie so much, it's hard for me to even put my heart into it. I just believe that they're being disingenuous at every single turn, which really annoys the shit out of me. And I'm tired of it. But what I do know is that every year I'm getting shook down like I'm part of the Gambino crime family or something. And I'm tired of it. They're stealing my money and I'm getting nothing for it. Like, think about it as an American citizen. You're paying like, I don't know what it is, 60, 70% of every dollar you make if you start factoring in all the taxes that we pay between income tax and property tax and tax on food and tax on services and tax on your investments and tax on your gas and tax on liquor and smokes and beers and all the shit they take. It's got to be 60% at least. I don't know what it is. People have told me a lot of different numbers, and I'm not a financial guru in that way. So, but I do know it pisses me off, and I'm sick and tired of giving money. And on the other end of it, I keep giving all of this money. The more successful that I get, the more money that I make, the more money that it costs me. And then what do I get in return? Higher rates of health insurance, higher rates of life insurance, higher rates of car insurance, higher rates at the grocery store, higher prices at the pump, higher taxes on everything that I enjoy. I'm sick and tired of it. So if we could eliminate the IRS, amen. Believe me, I'd be the first guy to vote that one in if I had a choice, because I'm sick of it. And taxes, the way that we pay them now, was not really the way that they were supposed to be intended when they started. But again, you give government an inch, what do they take? 100 miles. So, and then they just completely spent. I heard a story last week that we send between, I think it's $20 and $40 million every single week to Afghanistan. What in the hell are we doing? What if we gave this money we gave to, Ukraine and to Afghanistan and to all these other places that we give money to constantly who never pay us back? What would happen if we gave that to every single person in the United States? It would improve the life. If people in the United States, the little guy who only makes 50 grand or 30 grand or whatever, didn't have to pay income tax on his overtime or on his check at all, this country would explode like you never saw before. The amount of success that people would be able to attain by opening that up, people who were free thinkers that actually had motivation to change, would change the dynamic of our life for the rest of the life that we lived. Our country would become so powerfully wealthy that we would never have to worry about so many different things that we're concerned with now. But we don't do that. We just keep giving it away. And then when they spend it all, what do? They look at you and me and they say, it's time for us to raise taxes again, No accountability. What country, what company, what business in this world operates at a deficit like this country does and survives? How do we survive as a country the way that we irresponsibly and frivolously spend the tax dollar from the American people? Like, how do we do that and survive? We borrow money from people that at some point, we're going to have to say, we just aren't paying you back, because we'll never be able to unless something changes. And I'm hoping that maybe like people are starting to understand that now, like politicians in general, and not just Trump, but these senators, and the governors and the House of Representatives and all of these people that are involved in the government, like, it's time. What we're doing does not work. The I hate you stuff between the Democrats and the Republicans, the nastiness and like the election process and how the media has been lying to everybody. It just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. And I think most people, you know, the ones that are like sheep that are blinded by like one side or the other, they just stick with the narrative, and they know in their, you know, in the deep in their heart, they know that, you know, they're full of shit. There's no way that they could totally side with all this stuff, or they're just not looking at the full picture. When you look at the full picture, you as a person, whether you're successful or you're not, are getting your pockets turned inside out like a loan shark would do you if you were, you know, borrowing money off the back alley or a street corner down in, you know, Italian town or whatever, you know, Little Italy in New York or some shit. The only difference is they don't break your legs if you don't pay. They're just shaking you down, and they'll just ruin your life if you don't do it. The amount of militarization of the media toward people to try to destroy them, like, it's just, it's insane. I've never seen anything like it. 2024 was so great in Detroit for growth. It was so great in the market to see appreciation. It was so great to see, you know, rents get to where they were, and see people choosing not to live in the suburbs to live in Detroit because they get a bigger, better, more structurally sound or better built home than they could in the suburbs for a lesser price, fully redone with brand new windows and roof and sewer and furnaces and water tank, setting themselves up to really get a 30-year mortgage on a home that could legitimately last for 15 to 20 years without them having to do anything major, because everything is brand new. It's so good to see that. I haven't seen that since I was a kid. You know, I graduated from high school in 1998. When I was a kid, I grew up in Detroit from I was born in 1979 through the 80s and through the 90s and to now. I've seen the whole thing. I've seen it not as far back as the riots, but I saw the systemic problem of racism that still kind of exists today, that's built into people in Detroit because of that systemic racism, like the little backhanded comments that happen between, you know, your elder uncles and aunts and maybe your grandma and your grandpa or your old uncle, whoever, and you get in a Christmas party or, you know, Thanksgiving or something, they're still over there saying racially motivated comments. And like young people, the more like the younger of the people that I know that I personally am in their lives, they're getting so far away from that now that it's just dead. It's dying. You know, they don't share it anymore. They hear them saying those things in the corner, but they don't really acknowledge it anymore. And it's a beautiful thing. And the new year and the new vision, and I'm going to get into that as we go forward. I know I'm like rambling a little bit, but I'm just so excited to get back and talk about the market. The new vision coming forward is that this is going to continue. And I wanted to point out one article before I transition into the next episode. And we're going to start talking more about the issues, the growth, the specific neighborhoods of Detroit, why to buy there, why they're important, what's going on there, why should you, what's the future of it? Like all of those things, I know the answer because I'm so plugged in to this Detroit market. I sell hundreds of properties a year. I know the who's who. I'm buddies with the majority of all the high producing agents. I know people in government. I know police officers, from the guys on the street to the guys that are way up high. I know people everywhere in Detroit. I'm ingrained in it. I got roots deep. And I want to talk about this article. And this article came out like late January. And basically, Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan says Detroit real estate is thriving. Home values triple since 2017. That is an absolute fact. Since 2017, I don't have an investor that bought a house for me in 2017 that has not at least doubled their money. And those are people who faced like multiple evictions and things throughout the course of time since they bought it. But people who had a good investment on the retail side have seen 3 times what they paid for their house. And in some cases, it's more than that. Let me read this article to you and then we'll cut it off. I'll come back to you and we'll talk on another podcast and we'll start getting into more of the meat and potatoes. I just wanted to get back to this and, you know, let you know I'm still alive. I'm stronger than ever. Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest is never going anywhere. I'm big on making sure that people come to me. I teach them everything that they need to know, make them comfortable, put them in front of great investments, and watch you thrive. I want to see you thrive. I don't want to take advantage of you like some of these TikTok internet gurus that are like, we're going to teach you how to do Section 8 rentals for only $300 down, and we're going to teach you with our masterclass to be a millionaire within the next 30 days. Bullshit. It's not going to happen. They're lying to you. Turn that shit off and start listening to somebody who's going to tell you the real deal and teach you in real time without charging you money how to do this at a high level and make money and be successful. That's me. That's Detroit Buy Hold Invest. That's all of the agents now that I have working for me from the top to the bottom. There will not be another person who can help you better than Detroit Buy Hold Invest in all of Detroit if you truly give us the ability to help you do what we think that you should do. Okay? We're going to drive you in the success that you want because we know what we're doing and we actually care. And we're going to tell you not to buy 8 out of every 10 houses that you're interested in because they're probably a piece of crap and we want, you as a customer long term. But anyway, let me read this article. Real estate in Detroit is not only recovering but thriving, with Mayor Mike Duggan announcing on Monday that homeowners have seen their property values more than triple since 2017. We are now seeing the neighborhoods that had lagged before now climbing the fastest, said Mike Duggan during his news conference. One of those is the Delray neighborhood that sits in the shadow of the future Gordie Howe Bridge, which homeowners feel has put them in the spotlight. Before the bridge was there, nobody even knew they were there. Jeffrey Bird, who lives in Detroit, Delray, said, "They're getting more attention now." According to the data from the city, property values in zip code 48209 went up by more than 50% in the last year. Citywide, there was an average increase of 23%, resulting in a record $1.7 billion increase in homeowner wealth. Think about that, people. $1.7 billion increase organically just through appreciation because of the market. And this is such a great opportunity. And I'll continue. Detroit has now passed the city of Miami with the most rapidly growing home values in America. For 16 straight months, Miami led the country. They're the hot city. When they got displaced, you would have thought it would have been Phoenix or Austin, Texas, or someplace in North Carolina. Duggan said, hold on a second. In North Carolina, Duggan said, who would have ever thought to see the day the value of homeowners in Detroit is exceeding the rest of America? And that's true. It's really happening. Duggan attributes the success to various initiatives, including demolitions, renovation of vacant houses, and improving infrastructure. There was no investment in America that is better than 300% gain in owning a house in the city of Detroit in the last 7 years, Duggan said. Despite this remarkable increase under the state constitution, tax hikes are capped at 5%, providing relief to homeowners. Assessment notices are going out this week, which is the first step in case homeowners want to file an appeal with the assessor's office. Let me stop here. This is one of the things I'm going to talk about in this podcast about Detroit is seeing an opportunity, and their opportunity is getting overstepped big time. They're going after people who can't afford to pay an excessive increase, so they're targeting investors, and they're giving excessive increases to investors and some homeowners that are going to force the market to go backwards. And people are doing something about that. But I just want to point that out. Even though we're seeing these huge increases, the city's celebrating it. They're also making a back-ended plan to come and try to take more money away from us, even though we're the reason why they got where they got. So anyway, despite this remarkable increase under the state constitution, tax hikes are capped at 5%, providing relief to homeowners. Assessment notices are going out this week, which is the first step in case homeowners want to file. Hold on a second here. Yeah, here we go. In case you want to dispute, you can go to the assessor's office, blah, blah, blah. We know we do a good job, but there are 220,000 houses in this city. We'll get something wrong. That's why Detroit has the longest and most intensive review period in the state of Michigan. Tax bills will go out at the end of June and November. Per the city of Detroit, here's how to file an appeal, and they talk about all that. If you want to know about how to file an appeal, you just get with me and I'll let you know. But the reason for this article was to point out, and this is how Detroit works, to point out, look, we've increased value by 300%, and now we're going to tax the shit out of you, and we'll probably make a mistake when we reevaluate your taxes. So here's how you'll challenge that. This is how it works here. But with all that being said, It's a tremendously good opportunity. You cannot lose if you're buying in Detroit and you have the right people by your side. We're going to go into podcast after podcast this year where we talk about what's going on, how to build this thing right, where to buy, where not to buy, what to target, why to do that, and how to be successful. Thank you for listening to Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest podcast. My name's David Rabior. You can go to my website at www.detroitbuyholdinvest.com. You can check me out on YouTube. You can Google David Rabior. You can type in Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest. I'm there for you to find me. You can reach me on my cell phone at 313-451-0448. Hit me up. Let's talk. Be sure to like. Be sure to follow. Be sure to help me out on this podcast journey. I know that you guys will enjoy the information that I have, and I'd be glad to have you along for the ride. You guys have a great day.